Hey guys, it's Angel. Welcome back to the channel, and we're here today in Papua New Guinea. We're flying up Coronado's Skymaster, but we're here because we're flying up to Kokoda. Now, we're doing this because obviously the World Update has brought loads of new airports in this part of the Pacific, and I want to tell you a story during today's flight about the Battle of Isurava. I think is how I pronounce it. My god, my English is terrible. Isurava. No, Isurava. Yeah. Battle of Isurava. Isurava. I am stupid, but we know this. Let's get ourselves going and we'll talk about it when we're on the way. We're heading up to an airport called Kokoda, which is located on the Kokoda Trail. Very famous from World War II and Australia's involvement with fighting the Japanese. So, we'll talk about that when we get up there. But, let's turn our systems on here for us. My gear lever is up, so let's correct that real quick. Let's make sure this is all good. This is one of those aircraft where unfortunately I have to start both engines. Oh no, I don't, do I? Because I can set to both. I can make sure my boost pumps are on. There we go. Those are all looking good. Come on, why won't you turn on beacon? This is the conflict between the Bravo and the Alpha that's happened sometimes. Eventually I'll find the beacon. There we go, we found the beacon. Wonderful. Okay, so this is all ready to rock. This will be on now. Acquiring satellites, and then we'll be ready to go for engine start. So, yeah, unfortunately, because it's a rotate to start, I can't do it separately. So I do have to, unfortunately, do it at the same time. Clear prop. Cool, we have good engine start. So yes, we're heading up to Kokoda village, which is up in the mountains of Papua New Guinea. They've had a bunch of stuff here and out in the South Pacific itself, so let's get ourselves going and we'll talk about the Battle of Isurava. Aha! See? I got it that time. And it's changed the weather on me. We want a nice view today, so we're going to change it off. Actually scattered to few. That's much prettier, isn't it? Okay. Alright, there we go. So the Skymaster is one of my favourite Coronado planes just for exploring and adventuring because it's such a quick aircraft and great visibility too. For a twin, pull the power back here. So this battle, before we take off, is one of the most desperate battles in Australian history, and it was fought in August 1942 at Isurava on Papua New Guinea, which is in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, which is where we are going today. There's actually a monument there, which is in the sim. We added it with this world update, so we will see that monument on our way up to Kokoda. And be able to actually experience that. So, let's get our flaps set here. Taxiway should be over there. And we'll get ourselves out here in no time at all. Big airport, Jackson's. Need to get an add-on for this one. Don't have one, unfortunately, but, you know, could be worse. Seems really not that bad when it comes to some of their stock airports these days. A little bit of fast taxi won't hurt us if we're really trying. But I will slow down before we get here. This thing doesn't like to turn quickly. It's not its forte. A little bit of braking action. Even at this speed, we're going to turn and you'll feel the aircraft lean a little bit. We're not going to need to have any more runway for here, so we're going to take off to our right, which should be taking us up in the direction we're leaving anyway. Runway 32. Bags of room there. We are clear. Let's get ourselves turned on to the runway heading and get ourselves up, and we can start talking about this very famous incident. Here we go. I love this thing. It's an absolute monster to fly. So much power. And you don't get that same bulky feeling of having the twin engines out on the wings. The push-puller configuration really makes it a very nimble aircraft, which is probably why they were used by the US military. In Vietnam, of course. Gear coming up. Oh, I've already done it. I need to just commit to that. I shouldn't do it too soon, because... See the size of those doors? Yeah. They make a lot of drag. They're like the RuPaul of aeroplanes. Tons of drag. Let's pull our engines back here to where we want them to be. 2500 for now. So we are going to be climbing quite significantly, so we should be okay, but we'll get that on track and work it as we go. Here we are, leaving the coastal flats here of Papua New Guinea. It all starts to get a lot steeper from here as we get ourselves on course. So let's put some gear up. Flaps coming up. Let's turn our pumps off here. Yoke back on again. And I won't just reach for my gear lever again, even though I'm trying to reach for my trim wheel. There we go. Let's roll her on course. Tons of visibility. Love this about this aircraft. Really does make it for a very enjoyable experience. There we go. So it should take us about 15 minutes or so to get up there, and we'll talk about this as we fly. So this, of course, this battle at Isurava happened on the 26th of August 1942, lasted till the 31st. So the village was the site, one of the sites, I should say, of several desperate battles fought by Australian troops during their retreat along the Kokoda Trail. Now, this position at Dunkirk became untenable. They had the 39th Brigade, which was at the time the only Australian unit to confront the Japanese, withdrew to Isurava on the night of the 14th of August 1942. Poorly equipped, they dug in with their bayonets and mess tins and ration cans, with their helmets, all sorts of things, and they were fortunate the Japanese did not immediately follow up on the success at Dunkirk, and that lull in fighting allowed almost a fortnight of time for them to dig in and get reinforcements from the 21st Brigade. Now, on the 26th of August, the Japanese clashed with the 39th Forward Outpost at Isurava, heralding the start of their next attack. Now, the same day, the first two companies of the 14th Battalion arrived to relieve the 39th guys. Their average age was 18. Let's forget, Australia did have a big part in World War II. They were holding the line against this southern expansion of the Japanese at Papua New Guinea. So the next afternoon on the 39th's left flank, it was heavily attacked, and while the Japanese were able to penetrate the company positions, they were beaten back by two counterattacks. Yes, it was fighting all around the forward arc of that position through the 28th of August as the Japanese sought a weakness in the Australian defences. The rest of the first two battalions arrived that day, and its commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Albert Key, assumed command of the overall area. Now, although the 39th now had a chance to withdraw for rest, its commander, Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Honor, aware of the onslaught that the 214th would face, decided they'd remain in place, which, considering they're exhausted and under-equipped, was impressive. So they were moved into positions at the rear to allow the new, fresh units to take the most threatened parts of the position. So they'd have backup, but it was mostly to give them some chance of respite and act as a quick reaction force. On the morning of the 29th, big attacks happened on those forward arcs on the two new companies. The first to give way was C Company of the 214th, and the Japanese poured through that gap, threatening the whole position. Counterattack met those guys head on, including guys from the 39th. Private Bruce Kingsbury was to the front. He rushed forward with his Bren gun, mowing down the Japanese. Kind of heroic moment there. Unfortunately, he was killed by a sniper's bullet. He was subsequently awarded the posthumous Victoria Cross for his actions. But that counterattack led by him actually restored the situation, allowed the Australians to reform their line, And whilst the Japanese did continue to press home their attack in the afternoon, they were able to hold, only giving some ground. D Company, who were across the trail, they broke at around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, having repulsed 11 attacks at its positions. That is insane. Well, as night arrived, they were in absolute danger of being overwhelmed, and a withdrawal from just a kilometre to positions around the Isurava guest house was conducted, which is where the memorial is. The Japanese followed close on their heels, unlike last time, and on the 30th, there was no break. So with some of the companies under his command now struggling to muster a full platoon, Key lacked troops to cover the high ground to his left. The weakness the Japanese exploited. The heavy attack the Australians' rear right threatened to cut off the trail behind them, and a further withdrawal was ordered at 3 p.m, but many of them had to fight their way out, including Key's own command squad. Yeah. So when the 214th mustered at Alola the next morning, 172 personnel were missing in addition to those known to be dead and wounded. That's pretty heavy numbers. Well, at Isurava, the Australians had been absolutely overwhelmed by superior numbers, which, considering they were poorly equipped and supported, they were never going to match. The guys that came in were experienced and relatively fresh, but its potential to wrestle the initiative from the Japanese was completely undermined by a torturous march along the trail to get there, so they could only really be employed in a piecemeal fashion in which they'd arrived at Isurava. The delay, unfortunately, meant that this is what led to that collapse in the positions, but overall that delay in 1942 helped to really lock down Papua New Guinea as the front line at the south of the Japanese advance. It made a huge, huge difference to that conflict. We often don't think about the Australians fighting on their doorstep. You know, Papua New Guinea is across, the Torres Strait from Australia. The Japanese might have landed in Australia if it hadn't been for the stalwart defence the Australians actually put in before the Americans started to attack. Because, of course, this was August. The Americans come in December this year. And that's when Japan's focus had to shift. So if it hadn't been for these Australian battles in August around the highlands of Papua New Guinea, the Japanese could well have landed in Queensland. Australia could have been occupied and fought on during World War II. So the sacrifice these guys made, these very inexperienced, under-equipped guys, and of course Australians, Kiwis, and also the Commonwealth troops fought throughout the war, throughout the European and Pacific theatres. It's very underappreciated just how much they did on their home front. They fought as hard as the British did to defend the home islands against the Germans, and it's something I think that really should be appreciated more. The Anzac forces did a huge amount of work in the Second World War, and outside of their own lands, I don't think are as appreciated as they could be. God, look at this scenery. This is gorgeous out here. Cloud and forest and all sorts of things. Beautiful. Leave the mix drop a little bit. A little off track here, so we're about 8 minutes away from the memorial. There should be a couple of minutes then on to Kokoda. Is it Kokoda? Am I mispronouncing that one again? I probably am. Kokoda. That'll be it. I do love me some mountain flying, some bush flying, and this plane is a great one for getting in and out of short strips. Not great for rough surfaces, because it's a retractable, obviously. Complex gear systems don't typically make the strongest. This is why bush planes have pretty tough gear on them. But Coronado do know how to make a good plane. And I enjoy flying the Skymaster. I will say, by the way, there's a huge number of updates coming for a number of Coronado aircraft, including this, the 182, the Mooney, Seneca, Seminole, PC-12, and 170. Huge updates to performance, flight models, and also functions, including adding the default sim pilots, by the way. So a lot of these aircraft are getting default sim pilot options for them, so you now can fly with your pilot rather than Grumpy and Grumpy Jr. It's a little bit of a Coronado classic, of course, to have those, but I am very glad to be able to have the pilots I want in my aircraft now, because I've never really liked having that forced on us in a world where we have a choice of our pilot in this sim. it really does feel clunky to have a fixed pilot in there again. Part of the dangers of PNG is the cloud can get pretty low to the terrain. You have to be a little careful. In fact, we're going to scud through the side of the gap here, rather than worrying about going through that, because as the terrain gets higher, these clouds are going to hide some rather terrifying obstacles. A little bit of trim. There we go. Lots of little airports around here. Most of them are literally just little grass strips, but certainly a great place to explore and enjoy, and there's already quite a lot of scenery options out there for this part of the world. It makes a big difference. In terms of the overall Pacific conflict, though, you have to think of Japan's overall economic expansion in the early part of the 40s and the 30s, to be fair, because it started before 39 with their engagement with China and Manchuria, but overall, the Japanese were really pushing to gobble up as much of the Pacific as possible for an empire. They saw the Western nations doing it in Europe and Africa, and they were desperate to try and get their own territory. Now, obviously, once war really broke out, and they started moving faster and faster, they were an unstoppable juggernaut. People underestimate them a lot. They were a very potent military force, and you have to remember, Australia, they didn't have any domestically made tanks. They're not exactly a line one military at the time. Granted, a lot of tanks from the Western worlds in the 30s and the 40s were terrible. They got better over the war, but you have to think that Japan had decent armour. Australia didn't have decent armour. They had some British tanks, but it's a huge country. They would have been overwhelmed very rapidly. So this is the terrain, by the way, that these guys would have had to have marched through to get to the Kokoda Trail. And the Kokoda Trail itself, this is vicious terrain to have to march through on foot. There's no train lines, there's no roads for vehicles up here, in many cases. There are some, but not many. This would have been on foot. This would have been day marches and night marches. This would have been slogging up hillsides and mountains, crossing valleys, and then having to fight when you get to the end of it. We're flying and it's going to take us 20 minutes today, but for these guys, they'd have been exhausted, drained, and absolutely out of their energy by the time they got to the battle, and then expected to fight. So try and rationalize that for me for a second. I'm trying to plug my headphones in. Sorry for jerking my head around. Have to find the plug. That's news to me. Okay, so don't plug your headphones in when you're flight simming, because apparently I just reset the electronics on this aircraft. That's a surprise. Go figure. That was very weird. There was a big freeze moment there, which I'm going to cut out in post, but that was weird. Let's hope our systems come back online here. Picking up satellites. Yeah, imagine hiking up this, marching up here to get to where we're going. That'd have been grueling. Yeah, we're still 7 nautical miles out, and this terrain is getting higher and higher and higher. And this is the way they've had to come. Up here. In fact, do I see the trail down there? A little bit feels like Vietnam as well, in an O2. I do not. I thought I did see the trail. We see a river down there. Look at how impassable this terrain is for man. Yeah, naturally aspirated engine is complaining a tad up here, but we're making it just fine. We'll clear this ridgeline with plenty of airspeed. And then we'll be on to Kokoda after this. Considered this in a World War II aircraft, but at the same time wanted something with great visibility here for the tourist side of things to show you guys what this place is like. It's hard to appreciate from very small windows exactly what you're dealing with. I'm actually rather enjoying these flying history lessons. I did, of course, one with Tobruk, and whilst this is not necessarily a period aircraft, it's a lot of fun because I get to show you guys some interesting places in the world and talk about history in a different way that lets you really appreciate the land and the environment that these battles were fought in, which I do think changes our perspective, because it's all fine and well to read and understand the academia, the history of a certain conflict, but actually seeing where it was done makes it very different. You look at this and you think about how horrible this would be to walk through. Walk through it and then fight. Okay. We're approaching the memorial now. Pull our power back here. Try and find this thing. It should be on a ridge line, from what I recall. 1.5 miles. It should be down here somewhere. Yes, 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 yes. Quiet. There we are. There it is. We'll go down and take a better look at that. Stop complaining. Give it a nudge of power. That's a ridge line. Need to be careful about that. Yeah, this is pretty difficult terrain to get a good low view on, so we'll try and do the best we can. I may have to cheese a little bit, but it might be worth it, actually. There is no physical way for me to land down there, unless we brought a helicopter. So I think cheese is necessary. Oh, actually, I can make that. We're doing it, we're landing. Right, sorry, but I need to cut my power here. I need to lose speed as quickly as I can. Let's do something stupid! We like stupid. Stupid's fun. This is brainless, but I'm going to do it anyway. You know me. You love me. You love me doing this sort of stupid thing. Oh, this is a terrible decision, but we're doing it anyway. This is a terrible life choice. Why am I making this? This is a poor decision. Ugh. Duh. Poor life choice, but I don't care. Whilst we bask in the sunlight after a wonderful successful landing that I should never have attempted because that was stupid. Although, could have attempted, didn't. Stay. The reason I'm here is we want to look at the memorial itself. I don't care that I flipped the plane, whatever. But as you'll see here, there's the onyx pillars. And you can actually read these if you come here, by the way. Yep, you could read those. And there's the ridgeline. And the trail came from where we left Port Moresby all the way up. Courage, endurance, mateship, comradeship, sacrifice. In remembrance of those Australians and Papua New Guineans who fought and those who died on the Kokoda track 1942. It is great to see this sort of thing in the sim because it really adds so much depth to the history that you can actually visit something like this. And this is where the war would have taken place. This is where the battles were. That is crazy. This terrain is horrible. Let's go back and fix this stupid thing. Yeah, I tried to pull a whoopsie and come in low behind the trees, come up to actually kill a lot of my airspeed. Probably a little bit too much because I started to stall and then drop down heavy. So, not ideal, but I don't care. We are, however, going to take off somewhat realistically. I'm going to pretend I did this right. There's no way I'm doing this. Oh, maybe. How do I turn around without tipping over? There's no way of turning around with tipping over. Yeah. No. No, 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 no. Okay. Improvisation required? I have no idea where I am anymore. Oh. Just doing that. Okay. So we have to do this really quick. Like, really quick. No! That's a really pretty image. Here's an idea. Let's just do this. Yeah. We came here for the sake of visiting the memorial. Let's forget that happened, because that's pretty bad. We'll pretend I was great. Because, you know, the memorial's what matters, of course. Nothing to do with my flying at all. So we'll get ourselves down to Kokoda and we'll land this thing properly, you know, like human beings, not idiots. Remember my motto, fly however you want, but don't fly like me. I wanted to make sure you guys saw that. That's my excuse and I'm sticking to it completely. We'll have a much more fun time at Kokoda. Much more fun. We've got 3,500 feet of sand, which should be manageable. In fact, there it is. More than manageable. Pretty sure that's my airport there. Let's kill that power. Let our nose come up, burn some airspeed. We're still descending, but if I just raise the pitch a little bit, we're doing it slightly less aggressively. Yeah, that's our runway, and that looks like hard sand / grass, so I think we should be just fine with this. I promise to do a good landing this time. Not Idiot Force 1. Flying like a drunk bogan. And I do know one, so I know what that would be like. Be sniffing the glue. Right, let's drop the wheels. Actually, negative. We'll keep those up for now. We'll do a low pass, check it out, make sure it looks like a good surface, then we'll turn around and come in. So I'm definitely going to hit it from this side. That should be fine. Yeah, this looks really manageable. We should be just fine here. Pretty firm looking, but manageable. Okay, we've got markers there on the grass. Yeah, we can do this. Right. And 1, 2, 3, and brake. Reckless flying is my favorite. Reckless flying, fun for all the family. And great ways to ditch a ton of airspeed all of a sudden. Oh, look at us, perfectly on a downwind. The bush pilot's brake. Okay, wonderful. Exactly where we want to be. We don't talk about what happened in the mountains, okay? What happened in the mountains stays in the mountains. Probably. Am I going to go back and try that again? Yeah, most likely, just not in this thing, which is a slippery twin. That sounds like a terrible cocktail or a really bad film. God, I'm never going to say that again. Don't listen to anything I say. It's bad for you. God, I can't stop thinking about it. Gonna soft field this, considering it's a bit of a interesting surface, so here we go. Nice and gentle over the river. Power back to idle. Props are full fine. We're at 2,000 feet down here, so we got good air fuel mixture. It's most likely sand because it's sandy, kind of soily, loamy ground. Not loamy, wrong one. Podsol. That's the one. Podsol. Bags of room here to touch down a little bit late. Keep the nose wheel up. That's how you do it. Nice gentle touchdown. Keep the nose wheel high. Let it settle down. Low braking. Flaps in to put more weight on the wheels. Less lift. Gentle brakes now. Nicely done. Far less ridiculous than my last landing. Almost professional, one might say. Promised you I would, didn't I? Boom. Confetti, as the great Jimmy Johnson would say. What a beautiful spot, huh? What a beautiful spot indeed. Nestled in the PNG highlands. That's like a very big building over there. What are you? It has to be a hospital or something. That looks so out of place. What? I mean, it might be. I mean, it's close to an airport, so there's a reasonable chance it could be. Serving multiple villages? Maybe. God, this is idyllic. Wow. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.